Hey everybody, my name's Ruthie Barger. I'm a real alcoholic. And tonight we are going to talk about the beginning of Alcoholics Anonymous. We are on page 26, the first paragraph in. We're talking about a certain American businessman. That certain American businessman was a man by the name of Roland Hazard. Roland Hazard was a very, very moneyed man, and he ended up getting sober in the Oxford group. Roland Hazard and Zelba Graves was very instrumental in getting Ebby Thatcher sober. Ebby Thatcher was the one that got Bill Wilson sober. And in all of Bill's talks, Bill said that this right here was the beginning of Alcoholics Anonymous. So what we are going to do is, I have here on the board that we suffer from a disease that is physical, mental, and spiritual. And this is how we come about our recovery. Dr. Silkworth gave us the problem. He told us that we had allergy to the body coupled up with a problem in the mind. And that this mind, the obsession of the mind, is what kept the alcoholic in his cups. And today we know that the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous is what will work on that obsession of the mind. The mental part of the disease, and Dr. Silkworth told us that the main problem of the disease of alcoholics centered in the mind rather than in the body. And Dr. Carl Jung was a psychiatrist over in Switzerland that worked with Sigmund Freud. They were very, very good friends, and they practiced psychiatry together. And they came to a parting of the ways whenever it came to finding a solution of any problem, because Sigmund Freud wanted to say that all problems were centered around a person's sexuality. And Dr. Carl Jung had come to the solution that all of man's problems centered around his spirituality. And this brought on a parting of the ways. And thank God, when Roland Hazard was sent to Switzerland, that he ended up with Dr. Carl Jung. Who knows where we would have been if he'd have got tangled up with Sigmund Freud, huh? So this is where we're starting out right now, and let's get into the book. Page 26, first paragraph down. That's the wrong one. Okay, here we go.
A certain American businessman had ability, good sense, and high character. For years, he had floundered from one sanitarium to another. He had consulted the best-known American psychiatrists. Then, he had gone to Europe, placing himself in the care of a celebrated physician, the psychiatrist Dr. Jung, who prescribed for him. Though experience had made him skeptical, he finished his treatment with unusual confidence. His physical and mental condition were unusually good. Above all, he believed he had acquired such a profound knowledge of the inner workings of his mind and its hidden springs that relapse was unthinkable. Nevertheless, he was drunk in a short time. More baffling still, He could give himself no satisfactory explanation for his fall. So he returned to this doctor, whom he admired, and asked him point blank why he could not recover. He wished above all things to regain self-control. He seemed quite rational and well-balanced with respect to other problems, yet he had no control whatever over alcohol. Why was this? He begged the doctor to tell him the whole truth, and he got it. In the doctor's judgment, he was utterly hopeless. He could never regain his position in society, and he would have to place himself under lock and key or hire a bodyguard if he expected to live long. That was a great physician's opinion. But this man still lives and is a free man. He does not need a bodyguard, nor is he confined. He can go anywhere on this earth, where other free men may go without disaster, provided he remains willing to maintain a certain simple attitude.
That certain simple attitude is described in our chapter 5 with the 12 steps.
Some of our alcoholic readers may think they can do without spiritual help. Let us tell you the rest of the conversation our friend had with his doctor. The doctor said, "You have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. I have never seen one single case recover where that state of mind existed to the extent that it does in you." Our friend felt as though the gates of hell had closed on him with a clang. He said to the doctor, "Is there no exception?" "Yes," replied the doctor, "there is. Exceptions to cases such as yours have been occurring since early times. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. To me, these occurrences are phenomena. They appear
Unexplainable. Phenomenon means unexplainable. Now, what he is going to describe here is what we know today as the vital spiritual experience. And what this is change. And he's going to have to change. And he's going to have to change something other than his breath. Now, he's going to talk about change, and he's going to be using all kind of fancy words. But what all these fancy words are saying is you're going to have to change. So let's hear this vital spiritual experience.
in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements.
Change.
Ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men, are suddenly cast to one side,
Change.
and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them.
Change.
In fact, I've been trying to produce some such emotional rearrangement within
Change.
you. With many individuals, the methods which I employed are successful, but I have never been successful with an alcoholic of your description.
Okay. Now let me tell you what we just read. Dr. Carl Jung, he's a predominant doctor. And Roland Hazard goes to him. And he is what Dr. Carl Jung calls a hopeless alcoholic. And he spends time with the doctor. The doctor explains to him what's happening, and he talks to him, and he gives him ways of treating it. And he says, "Okay, I got this thing." And he says, "Well, I don't think so." And he says, no, I ain't never going to drink again. Now that I know all of this stuff, I ain't never going to drink again. So in a couple weeks, he shows back up on his doorstep, drunk. And he says, "Okay." He says, "I'm willing to listen to you now." Because he realized with that last drunk that by himself, he could not get and stay sober. So he goes back to Dr. Carl Jung, and Carl Jung told him, he says, listen, you are the kind of drunk that I call the hopeless variety, and I have never got somebody as bad as you sober. And he thought that the gates of death had closed on him. And he says, you mean, isn't there anybody that can get over this? And Dr. Carl Jung knew that over in Europe, over in England, that there was a religious group, the Oxford group, that had been bringing in hopeless alcoholics. And they had introduced this vital spiritual experience with them. And they picked up their beds and walked again. And this is what Dr. Carl Jung is telling Roland Hazard. He says, I can't do it. He says, I don't even know what it is. But my suggestion to you is go and find these people in the Oxford group. And just maybe, they might be able to get you sober. Now, again, the Oxford group was, by their very nature, a religious group. They were a group of Christians whose primary purpose was to get back to first century Christianity. And that is nothing more than living the written word of the Holy Bible, minus church doctrine. And they welcomed what other churches would have called sinners. If you was a smoker, you could go to the Oxford group. If you was a Baptist that wanted to dance, you could go to the Oxford group. If you was a Methodist that wanted to wear makeup, you could go to the Oxford group. If you was a Catholic that got a divorce, you could go to the Oxford group. You know, all of these church doctrines that labeled people as sinners or not welcomed by their church were welcomed to the Oxford group. And one of those people that were welcomed were alcoholics. They were welcomed, and they allowed the alcoholics later on, as they started coming to the Oxford group, they started having meetings before the meetings. And they even acquired a name. They referred to themselves as the drunk squad of the Oxford group. And with with this, it even started having meetings after the meetings. And so this drunk squad was doing pretty good. And this is what Dr. Carl Jung had heard. That this Oxford group was getting these hopeless, helpless alcoholics and bringing them into the fold. And they picked up their bed and they walked again and they became prominent citizens. And Dr. Carl Jung knew that, so he sent Roland Hazard there. And what Dr. Carl Jung told Roland Hazard about actually happened to Roland Hazard. He went up to England. He went to the Oxford group. He got he got sober there. He came back to the United States and met up with a gentleman by the name of Sam Shoemaker, and him and some other name. It's gone. It had brought the Oxford group to the United States, and it just so happened that the is that speaker going on? I thought somebody was pulling a chair across the floor. I said, there ain't that much floor out there. Okay. So anyway, so Roland Hazard was fortunate enough to get sober and stay sober. And as we read in Bill's story, that there were two gentlemen that went to court when Ebby was going up. And one of them was Zelba Graves. And Zelba Graves just happened to be the judge's son. And Zelba Graves was from the Oxford group, and him and Roland Hazard went to his dad and said, listen, the next drunk that you get coming up before you, instead of sending them to the asylum, how about turning them over to us? Because we think we got a cure for alcoholism. And don't you know that the first person that came up was a gentleman by the name of Ebby Thatcher. So Roland Hazard and Zelba Graves were the two men that they talked about in Bill's story, got Ebby Thatcher sober, and Ebby Thatcher is the man that carried the message to Bill Wilson. So it is because of this gentleman called Ebby Thatcher that we are sitting here tonight. Now, Ebby does not have a real success story. But thank God he stayed sober long enough to carry a message to Bill Wilson. And with that message, Bill Wilson carried that to Dr. Bob in Akron. And very newly formed, Harry, who was it? Oh boy. Bob, do you know who brought the Oxford group to Akron? Harry, Firestone. Harry Firestone, I think it was. Is that who it was, Bob?
The guy, I don't remember his name either, but he was friends with Firestone and the
Yes.
Firestone's son.
Yeah, that I think Harry is the one, yeah. And he was the one that was married to Henrietta Seiberling. Oh, no, that's another Harry. Okay, let's keep all of our stories here separate. But, so anyway, this was how the Oxford group came to Akron, Ohio. But it had been in New York. All right, and this is where Ebby was at. Okay, so let's go ahead and get back into the book.
Upon hearing this, our friend was somewhat relieved, for he reflected that after all, he was a good church member. This hope, however, was destroyed by the doctors telling him that while his religious convictions were very good, in his case, they did not spell the necessary vital spiritual experience.
Now, last week we went over Appendix 2, which is a vital spiritual experience. And I have to tell you that here in the book, it asks you to go to page 567 on 3 separate occasions. The next time they're going to be begging you. They're going to be saying, please go to page 567. Well, since we went there last week, we're not going to do this one. And then whenever they're the last one, we're saying please, then we'll go there then, okay? Because this is something that's very, very, very important, this vital spiritual experience, this personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from the disease of alcoholism. So it's very, very, very important that we talk about that. Okay?
Here was the terrible dilemma in which our friend found himself when he had the extraordinary experience, which, as we have already told you, made him a free man. We, in our turn, sought the same escape, with all the desperation of drowning men. What seemed at first a flimsy reed has proved to be the loving and powerful hand of God. A new life has been given us, or if you prefer, a design for living that really works.
Now, see, we're talking about a design for living. We're not talking about a design to quit drinking. We're talking about a design for living. If you're here looking for a design to quit drinking, you're in the wrong room. And because here we're going to talk about a design for living.
The distinguished American psychologist William James, in his book Varieties of Religious Experience, indicates a multitude of ways in which men have discovered God. We have no desire to convince anyone that there is only one way by which faith can be acquired. If what we have learned and felt and seen means anything at all, it means that all of us, whatever our race, creed, or color, are the children of a living Creator with whom we may form a relationship upon simple and understandable terms, as soon as we are willing and honest enough to try. Those having religious affiliations will find here nothing disturbing to their beliefs or ceremonies. There is no friction among us over such matters. We think it no concern of ours what religious bodies our members identify themselves with as individuals. This should be an entirely personal affair, which each one decides for himself in the light of past associations or his present choice. Not all of us join religious bodies, but most of us favor such memberships. In the following chapter, there appears an explanation of alcoholism as we understand it. Then a chapter addressed to the agnostic. Many who once were in this class are now among our members. Surprisingly enough, we find such convictions no great obstacle to a spiritual experience. Further on, clear-cut directions are given showing how we recovered. These are followed by 42 personal experiences. Each individual, in the personal stories, describes in his own language and from his own point of view the way he established his relationship with God. These give a fair cross-section of our membership and a clear-cut idea of what has actually happened in their lives. We hope no one will consider these self-revealing accounts in bad taste. Our hope is that many alcoholic men and women desperately in need will see these pages, and we believe that it is only by fully disclosing ourselves and our problems that they will be persuaded to say, yes, I am one of them too. I must have this thing. Chapter 3.
Okay. All right, more about alcoholism. This is our story chapter. Now, what this chapter is about, the solution. And we are going to read story after story after story. And what we are going to be looking for is the insanity of the mind before it picks up the first drink. So many people think the insanity of alcoholism is that crazy shit you do when you're drunk. Oh, no, 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 no. The insanity of the disease of alcoholism is me sitting here clean and sober. Me having a 15-year record of alcoholic drinking behind me. Knowing exactly what happens to me when I pick up a drink or a drug. And having a thought go through my head. And this time, it'll be different. And believing it. That, my friends, is the insanity of the disease of alcoholism. Me sitting here clean and sober, knowing what my track record is with alcohol, and knowing exactly what happens to me when I pick up a drink, and having an insane thought go through my head, and it's always the same. This time, it'll be different. And believing it. And that's what we are going to look for in these stories, is that insane thought. So let's go ahead and get into this chapter. We still got a little bit of time. And in the first paragraph, we are also going to talk about the first step. And the principle of the first step is honesty. And we'll talk about that when we get to it.
3. More about alcoholism. Most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics. No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people. The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. The persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery.
Okay, now
The delusion that we are like other people.
This in the book is not italicized. And we are going to see that in the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, step 1 and step 2 are not italicized. And there's reasoning for that. Steps 1 and 2 are not steps that we work. Steps 1 and 2 are conclusions that we come to. And this requires me getting honest with me. So I have to learn to concede to my innermost self that I am alcoholic. And this and that I cannot drink. And this is the first step in recovery. I have to get honest with me. When I talk about honesty, I ain't talking about dollars and cents. I'm talking about me getting honest with me. Because the biggest lie I ever told is what I told myself. Because I believed it. And if I believe it, I can convince you of it. So, the principle of step 1 is honesty. And this is an ongoing thing. Honesty. And we have to learn that when we first come to Alcoholics Anonymous, that we have been running away from self our entire life. So me getting honest with me is opening up a great big door. Because I'm going to have to start getting familiar with a person that I know absolutely nothing about. Now, I know what I've been told. My whole life I've been told I was bad. Today they go to school and they tell you, oh, you got the ADHD and you got all of these initials. Well, back when I went to school, they called it bad. You was bad. You was just bad. So, my whole life I've been told that I was bad. So, it wouldn't tell me something, my mom and dad told me I was bad. And they were my parents, they wouldn't tell me something that wasn't the truth. So I've been, so whenever we start getting honest with self, you are going to be opening up a real can of worms here. And this might require therapy. And this can set off depressions and all kinds of things. And if you have to see psychiatrists, do it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with seeing a psychiatrist. Because like I said, you've been running away from self your whole life. And when you start being honest with yourself and you start opening up doors that ain't ever been opened before, that you might be needing some outside help. And that's help over and above the meeting rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I will tell you a little story here right now about a friend of mine that I worked with. He was packer at Packard. I worked at Packard Electric, Delphi, out on North River Road. Worked there for 37 years. Friend of mine was a packer there. And this was after I got sober. And he got fired from his job for drinking. got fired from his job. His wife was divorcing him because he was alcoholic. He had all kind of things. All of his bills was coming due, and he went into a treatment center. And he comes out of the treatment center, and he goes sees a psychiatrist, and psychiatrist telling him he suffers from deep depression, puts him on medication. And I'm only telling you this because I know that it happens. And it happened to my friend. And let me tell you that it happened at the Leavittsburg meeting that was held at the Johnson Community Center. There was a bunch of old-timers there that used to sit around in the corner and take everybody's inventories. And they got this young man in there, and they told him, how can you say you're being sober when you're popping these pills? And the guy stopped taking his medicine because these guys from AA wouldn't lead him wrong. And a couple weeks later, he ended up going to his wife's front yard and blowing his brains out. And his psychiatrist tells me Alcoholics Anonymous killed that guy. And I want to say that wouldn't happen. But I'm telling you, if there ain't somebody that has an MD at the end of their name, don't be listening to them about your medical problems. Please. Please. Because there's all of them doctors and lawyers that we drank with. Well, some of them got sober and they're still practicing. Okay? So be very, very careful. Please. Okay? So anyway, this is about getting honest. Let's see where we at. Okay. We're going to go on to, here's some requirements here.
Or presently may be, has to be smashed. We alcoholics are men and women who have lost
There's
the
a
ability
third.
to control our drinking. We
There's
know
a
that
fourth.
no real alcoholic ever recovers control. All of us felt at times that we were regaining control, but such intervals, usually brief, were inevitably followed by still less control, which led in time to pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization.
Now that right there is a hell of a word. Pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. And I don't know how to spell that. But I bet you every person in this room knows exactly what it feels like. Huh? Pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. Alcoholism.
We are convinced to a man that alcoholics of our type are in the grip of a progressive illness. Over any considerable period, we get worse, never better.
Here's 8
We are like men who have
conclusions.
lost their legs. They never grow new ones.
1.
Neither does there appear to be any kind of treatment which
There's
will
2.
make alcoholics of our kind like other men.
3.
We have tried every imaginable remedy.
4.
In some instances, there has been brief recovery, followed always by a still worse relapse.
5.
Physicians who are familiar with alcoholism agree there is no such thing as making a normal drinker out of an alcoholic. Science may one day accomplish this, but it hasn't done so yet. Despite
6.
all we can say, many who are real alcoholics are not going to believe they are in that class. By every
7.
form of self-deception and experimentation, they will try to prove themselves exceptions to the rule, therefore non-alcoholic.
8.
If anyone who is showing inability to control his drinking can do the right about face and drink like a gentleman, our hats are off to him. Heaven knows we have tried hard enough and long enough to drink like other people.
All right. That is our, what I choose to call, terminal uniqueness. Yeah. I'm alcoholic, but I'm going to turn myself around and turn into a social drinker. My terminal unique, you can't do it, but you don't know me. I can do that. Terminal uniqueness. That terminal uniqueness will kill me as fast as my alcoholism will. Setting myself aside as being different from everyone around me. Very, very deadly. And this is where we got to get into that definition of insanity. Performing a repetitious act and expecting a different result. Or the inability to learn from one's past mistakes. Insanity. Huh? Okay. All right, I think we're going to stop there for tonight, and I'm going to turn back over our chairperson, Cookie.